I've had many requests on how to correct the alignment or the set or, bend shears. And I've always reluctant to teach that because these are the kind of things that can happen. Here's another one. This is actually one that I did. There are others. I have plenty of examples. I don't know if you can see where this is taped together. Someone just sent that to me where the tip broke off. What can happen if you try to fix the alignment on shears, and I don't even know how this one happened. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Maybe they were trying to pry a paint can open. I don't think they were trying to fix the alignment, but things can happen that can destroy the shears that just, you can't come back from something like this or something like that. It's just no coming back. Even if you've warned the customer and you tell them, I've got to fix the alignment on your shears or fix the set or whatever, and there's a small chance I may break it, and if I do, I'm not going to be responsible. You are. It's still, you're the one that broke their shears. Now, if it's a Bonika shear, you are perfectly indemnified on this. So what you have to do, if it's a Bonika brand shear, and that means it'll have our fish on it, it'll say Bonika or whatever, and you call us and you say, hey, these shears, I fixed the tension, I fixed the edge, and I know it's an alignment problem, and I need to either bend or hammer or whatever your method is of repairing the shears. Say, do I have permission to do it? And we know which ones of our shears we can bend and which ones that are like, if you try to do anything to them, they're going to break. And if we give you permission and they break, then we'll replace it. If you try to do it and then ask for forgiveness afterwards, no, it doesn't work that way. So we want you to call us first, because if it's something that we know it's unlikely you're going to be able to fix it, we'll just send you a new pair to give to that customer. We want them happy, and then we'll bring it back here and we may play with it and use it as our show and tell or what have you. So getting back to bending or hammering scissors, I bend. And I bend for 3 reasons. Number one, I was taught to hammer, and the first time I tried, this is what happened. And I was in a salon and it went ping, and I had to buy them a new pair. And I was told these were Ford shears or Joel, but there happens to be very hard cobalt. And don't ever try to bend or hammer these black Joel shears. This is what happens, and that pingy sound is awful. Especially if you're inside a salon and they hear a tap, 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 ping. It's not good. And I don't think I've ever been able to get back in that salon, but fortunately it was like 3 hours drive from my house, so that's okay. That's number reason I don't hammer. Number 2, I don't hammer because I don't hammer nails. Trying to get it lined up, I usually end up with a broken thumb instead of a nail that's gone through, so I'm not adept at that. Of getting that right tapping sound and hitting it exactly. I just don't have that skill. And number 3 is I was trained by Casper Kaiser, who was in charge of the Eichert factory when it was McMinnville, where they manufactured the USA made shears. And in the way he taught me and the way they did in the factory was they would bend them instead of hammering them. I just feel like it's a little safer way to go than the hammering. And especially if you're in the salon, if you have to do this work in the salon, you're not making any noises. And I have never, knock on wood, broken a pair of shears using the bending method, okay? But I don't have a lot of hand strength either. So let's get into about when you bend and when you don't bend. If it is just slightly out of alignment, and I'll give you an example of that. Because I want to talk about alignment. Okay, you've checked the tension, you checked the edge, and maybe your ride line is looking wavy. These are some examples of incorrect ride lines that would be due to shears being out of alignment. These pictures were given to me to use with permission from the Arias Eichert factory from Casper. Each one of these has a specific place to bend. Let me go through these and show you. I'm going to get the manual here. and turned right to it. So this is the ones that have the weird looking rod lines. And then in the back of your training manual, if you were to come into us for training, in the appendix area, we show exactly where you should bend for each one. And I'll put pictures at the end of this video so you can see exactly where to bend for each one. So, in fact, when I did my certification for the Sharpeners Guild, I had those pictures in front of me because I don't do a lot of bending. The reason I don't do a lot of bending is I do mostly hairstylist beauty salon shears. They don't need as much bending or hammering or fixing the set as a dog groomer scissors. The softer metal is going to get misshaped. They're longer, they're falling on the floor, sometimes they're lower quality, they came from the factory with the alignment out, so all of these things. I know sharpeners that have retired now, but never ever bent a shear or hammered a shear, and we're making well over $100,000 a year profit. Because when shear needed it, they would say, hey, these shears, they might use the word warped instead of out of alignment or the set's off, but they'll say, hey, these shears need to be retired, and it's time to buy a new pair of shears. And that's typically what I do. Now, sometimes they're just a little bit out of alignment, and I can give you an example of this one. This one will cut, and let me get some tissue here. This will cut dry okay. No, not too okay. The tip cuts, if you have a tip cutter. This is another example. See, it'll cut dry okay. It feels a little crunchy. But if I were to wet the tissue, and I'll hold it up. That doesn't cut well at all, as you see. And look at this one. It's not cutting well either. Now, both of these shears, I happen to know, are some of our older Bonika Shears that were the silk shears. Usually, if they have this little Japanese word for silk, or if the screw is purple, those were shears that we had made and finished in a Taiwan factory, and they are cast instead of forged. I know these will break. The advantage to cast shears is that it's rare for them to get out of alignment. When they get out of alignment, it's usually due to over sharpening, which is the case on both of these shears. I don't know who was the sharpener, but I've got a collection of all kinds of things, an interesting history of them. But it's usually due to over sharpening, and when so much of this metal has been removed, it changes the shape of that blade so that you have an alignment problem. They rarely ever would get out of alignment from dropping them or cutting bigger chunks of hair. I usually would recommend these shears when someone was like to cut bigger, thicker sections, because they hold up to that. They don't get misshaped. So these shears, I could not bend them or would not be able to hammer them without them breaking, and they would become like this one here. See, it's got the purple screw. Same shear. I don't know where that got that thumb rest on, because that's not the original one, but all these have interesting little histories. But you see how this one the tip was broken off? Someone probably either dropped it or tried to align it, because these are cast shears and I know that they will break. So the way you'd have to fix these is you would just work the heck out of the ride line. And the ride line might look ugly like those pictures, but as long as you're working the ride line and the ride line is flat, you're going to be able to cut with them. May not be pretty, may have a little bit of drag, a little bit more friction in some of the areas, but you can make it work without cutting it, without breaking them. Now you can tell the stylist, now these you need to be thinking about making these your backup shears, and and then you can, you know, set them aside to retire them. Or also when you're trying to make a shear cut that's like this, that you can't bend, or you're reluctant to bend or hammer it, when you work the ride line and understand that the ride line will be crooked, it's just, there's no getting around it. It's do it at a blunter angle than what you normally would. So if you would normally sharpen at 45, let's do it at a 40. Or I've had some of them that were so bad and I just needed to make them cut, I might do them at 35, but rare would I ever do a convex at less than 40. I mean, it would have to be a rare occasion. And these two have the tips don't even come together. That's a bending handle, which is another video. So both of these, the way I would fix those to work the ride line, the way I do most of the shears that are just a little bit out of alignment, I just correct it with a ride line. Sometimes the ride line might look kind of ugly, and I'm going to show you this one. See if you can see. Yeah, you can see it in here. Do you see how that tip, we call that a wiped out tip? Now sometimes that's due to doing the ride line incorrectly, the wrong hand positioning, or what you're doing, however you're doing it. Sometimes it's done because the shears, instead of it being aligned, have a little bit of curvature at the tip. And if you're trying to bend right there at the tip, oh gosh, your chance of breaking is really, really high, because it's not as much metal there, and you've got to come in. I mean, to try to bend or hammer it right there is really, really difficult. So just putting a really ugly ride line on it will fix the problem. Sometimes when you do that wider ride line, it's going to be a little bit more slippery at the end, or pull tissue at the end. I don't know if these pull or not. I haven't tried them first, but I bet they do. Actually, they cut perfect. Look at that. That just goes to show you can wipe out the tip and they still cut. Let's try it on some hair. They cut pretty good on hair. Do you see that? So you can wipe out the tip and the shears still cut. But if we had tried to bend them, we could have broken it. If we had not really wiped out the tip and doing the ride line, it would have felt like snippy. So sometimes as sharpeners, we have to take lower risk and maybe deal with less than perfection. I consider us as sharpeners not as a body repair shop, like somebody brings in their car, it's totally wrecked and we're going to rebuild it, or, you know, we're rebuilding an older you know, I don't know much about cars, but, you know, someone's brought in like my 1973 Vega and said, hey, can you fix it, make it run? And that's not our job. Our job is to bring in a late, you know, someone brings in a late model car and we fix the brakes and we, you know, change the oil and minor repairs. The money is in those repeat minor repairs, and when it gets to a certain age, we say, hey, you need to retire these shears. They have made a lot of money for you over the years. I have one sharpener, she has these shadow boxes she keeps in her van with her. And she'll say, hey, I've got a shadow box out there and I will fix it up for you. You can hang it on the wall. Because these, you know, I have other stylists, they'll tie a little ribbon around them and retire their shears and let them sit, you know, in a special place of honor. Because there comes a time that it's not money well invested on the stylist part, or on or time and money on your part to keep a shear running that has gone past its age. And sometimes they've gone past their age, not because of the stylist overusing them, not because of your sharpening, but because some other joker is sharpening and has taken off too much metal. And now it's out of alignment, its life is gone, you can get it where it cuts, but it's never going to cut like new. So you need to understand that. Okay, let's get around to how I actually bend shears. Oh, here's another one I want to show you. Look at this. This is a Joelle K-blade. And I just want to show you what that ride line looks like. Isn't it awful? And this one would be one I would definitely tell the hairstylist, this needs to be retired. It's made you a lot of money over the years. That's an old shear. So what do we mean by out of alignment? The blades, if you hold them up to the light and you look at it, in fact, I'm going to bring some light in here, and let's see if we can show you this. If you hold the shears up to the light, let me tilt this way, you can see light between the blades. Let's see. Well, these are pretty close together. Let me see if I can find a better one, okay? Yeah, you can see my nose between a little bit. You see my eyes in there? You can see between the blades. It should be touching back here at that pivot and at the tip, and there's a little arch in between. And the correct way a shear should work is as you close it, the blades, can you see how the blades actually overlap? As you close it, they touch in one spot all the way down. And if you were to have these adjusted correctly, and you were to close them really, really gently, maybe just using one finger, it should be an even pressure all the way down until you touch. Now you see that one? Do you see how it had a little bit of a drag there? That one's probably either a little bit has a nick, or it's a little dull there, or it's out of alignment. See, I have to push a little bit more as I get there. But slightly out of alignment is not, it's workable. As I said, I'm not a high risk taker, so I wouldn't try to fix one that's slightly out of alignment. Some of these guys would. However, once in a while you will come across one, and this one I did on purpose. You see how bad that looks? I did this one really bad so you could see what's going on. And once in a while you'll come across one that's so bad. At this point I would probably just walk away from it, but if it's beyond what you can do and there's no way you can get it to cut without bending, hammering, or making adjustments on that alignment, now you've got a choice of what to do. When they're this bad, you really don't need an alignment bar, but I suggest that you carry one. This is a very flat piece of steel so that you can see what the edge looks like, what the alignment looks like. And when I'm doing this, I'm typically will hold this here. You see how I've got it on the bar? And I've got it lined up right here at the back. Now I took a class with a gentleman from Japan, and in Japan they were holding it with the sharp edge toward them this way, but I don't have enough strength in my left hand to hold this down, and so it works better for me this way. When I get that on the bar, and you can obviously see how bad that is, but I would take it up to the light, and you see I'm holding it against the window here, and I'd squeeze, and as I squeeze, if it's in alignment, that curvature of the blade, that is correct, you're supposed to have some light underneath there, should flatten out altogether and you shouldn't see any light. If you have a place where you're seeing light, then you know you have a problem. Now this one I have a really bad problem, because the minor ones I didn't think you could see on the video. But this one I have a really bad problem, and you can see, I'm going to put it right here. Do you see the light between it? You see it touches, and then that tip comes up again. Now if I were to squeeze back here, that gap's not going anywhere, and that tip is up in the air. Let me put this light here, maybe you can see a little bit better. But as I said, this is a huge exaggeration. And can you see that tip goes up in the air? So you're not going to come across something like this unless someone did it on purpose. But how you would fix it then is, these are two different styles of bending tools. We don't make these at this time. We get them from other companies. Neither one of them is perfect. That's why I have both of them. The gentleman that trained me back in the Stone Ages, literally the Stone Ages, I was sharpening without electricity. He had cut slits in his wife's kitchen cabinets, and he would stick his shears in those slits, and that's how he would adjust it. I think in the early days before I had one of these, I've used like a vise and had it close together, and then kind of could go in and bend it. But this is kind of obvious where you would want to bend in here and out there. So I would find the slot, and I'm bending, and then I would go in here to the slot here where, see, I've got that bent area here, and I would bend it down. Now, it's good if you don't bend exactly, if you're moving a little bit, I mean just, you know, a millimeter or two, so you're not doing all the bending right in one spot. Getting a little better. But you always run the chance of it going ping. And that's just trial and error. And I suggest get you a bad blade like this, bend it out of shape, and practice with it. This one I feel safer with because it's neoprene and I don't have the, it's a little harder to break. However, sometimes when you've got to bend them a lot, the aluminum one is going to do better because I've got a lot to bend. Now you see I'm wearing glasses. It probably would be better, especially with it this close to my face, to be using kind of maybe safety glasses of some sort. But you see what I'm doing? I'm trying to, that slot's too small. And that's getting there. And you can kind of eyeball it when it looks like it's about right, and then go back and check it on your bar. And I hate doing this. If you're doing dog groomers, you almost have to. You almost have to be able to do this, because this is the only time I really see this kind of stuff is on dog grooming scissors. And then you can kind of also do some twisting motions to get the blade to saw. Sometimes the blade it's not only bent this way, but it's kind of bent out, and you can use these slots to kind of bend it back in and together. Now, do you have the blade apart or together when you do this? If you're going to be checking on the alignment bar, you have to have them apart. That's the only way to do it. And I'm still seeing a big bend right there. And it's big bend not as in England, but on this shear that I really messed up too much. But, and you see how, can you see how I'm moving it down a little bit? Now, I'm not going to be able to get this perfect, no. But you kind of get the gist of it. That is getting a little bit better. If I would put it on the alignment bar, it's still going to be way off. You see that? And I'm sure some of you guys that, well, now, see, it doesn't touch here. It touches right at the tip and at the back. So at least I've got that problem fixed. I need to work on this middle part. And I'm sure I'll get some thumbs downs from some of you experts at this. This is not my expertise, because it's just a lot more profitable to sell them a new pair of shears. Low risk, more money, and then you can take the old shears as a trade-in. Take them home, bend them, twist them, do pretzels with them, whatever you want to. And this is information you have to have if you want to do some of the certifications that the different organizations have. If you don't have an inkling of wanting to do that, you're doing mostly beauty shears, this is not something you need to know, or definitely don't need to know like right off, you know, right out of the gate after sharpening, but you need to kind of have some comprehension, understanding of it. Now, Now we're going to get into the ones I really, really despise doing. Curve shears. Alright, the bad news is almost every curve shear I get in for sharpening it has some alignment issues. The sets off. When you close them slow, you'll feel them, like this one, it drags right there. See, and then it goes snippy. Might even actually hear it. So it's got a drag right there. So how do you put this on the alignment bar? You can't. Can't be done. You can hold it up and look at the space, which once again you should have that same, even though it's curved, the same arch space where it's touching here, touching the tip, and should have a little bit of light that shows between it. This one, if you were to look at it, you can tell it's definitely a little bit too close right in here, and it doesn't have that narrow to a little bit wider to narrow to touching arch that's supposed to have. So the bad news is that they're almost always out of alignment, and that you can't put them on the alignment bar, obviously. The good news is that because they're curved, you know you can bend them. Because when they make them in the factory, they make them straight, and then they put the bend in them. So you know you can do a bend. Now, I've been told a couple of ways to do this, and typically what I'm told is that you bend one blade or the other. You make one blade as in your mind the alignment bar, and the other blade you bend it to get it to work together. I've also heard some people say you bend it together. I've tried that. That doesn't seem to work. But you can bend the blade, and it's just a matter of feel. You kind of do some, like this one is feeling a little snippy right here. So, and some of you experts on this are probably saying she's making this a little harder than it should be. So that feels better already. I'm going to do a little bit more here. Now, just because it feels better doesn't mean it cuts better, because maybe I've bent it too much and it's not coming together. So after each bend, you need to go in and cut with it and see what's going on. And it's just trial and error, trial and error. Practice. There's some people that are much better at this than others. My suggestion is, if you're new to sharpening, or let's say maybe you're a groomer or a stylist, and you know you have that little bit of a pull in there, you can find some kind of a slotted something and go in here and kind of work it a little bit on these curve shears, and just check it and bend it a little bit more, and check it and check it. But if you're new to sharpening, this is advanced work. Don't feel like you have to be able to do this the first 6 months or even year that you've been sharpening. I probably sharpened maybe 6 or 7 years before I ever did any shear bending. And only shears I bend are ones that I own, except for dog groomers, because usually they're really cheap scissors. They've fallen on the floor. They'll be curved shears that you know you can bend, and there's no way, there's not a way to fix it. My specialty and my love is doing the beauty shears, because to me they're easier to sharpen. You can make more money at it. They're usually higher quality, and you don't run into as many problems. But usually the stylists don't have as many shears. Where when I have groomers that come in the door, because we have a lot of walk-in business, and most of our walk-in business are groomers, they'll bring me 5 or 6 pairs of shears. So that adds up to more than the 1 or 2 that the stylist might have. But I hope that was helpful to you on bending shears and how to set the alignment. Look at those diagrams, go back and see where you need to bend. Practice, take trade-ins when you get a pair of shears that need alignment or need bending or whatever. If you can't fix it doing the ride line, you know, say, hey, these shears are ready to retire and I happen to, you know, have some new shears with me. If you would like to give me, you know, these as a trade-in, I can give you so much off your new shears. Now you've got some to take back with you and, you know, sharpen, bend, hammer, whatever you want to do. Throw them against the wall and they make you crazy. You can always send them to me. As I told you, I have a wholesale price that I'll do for sharpeners and for beauty distributors, beauty supply distributors, and I will sharpen them. I'll critique them. I'll tell you, hey, this is what you should have done, or this is what you shouldn't have done. If it's not a Bonika brand and you want me to bend the shears, I need to have something from you saying it's okay in case I break them. I'll try not to break them, but we'll see what we can do. Even in the factories, when I've talked to people that have worked in the shear manufacturing, they usually have one person that's all they do all day is tap, 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 hammer, scissors, or bend, 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 whatever their method. Tapping and hammering is by far the most common way they do it in the factories. But even though it's one person that's all his specialty is, I'm told that they'll break 3 to 5%. For someone that does as little hammering or bending or whatever as we do as sharpeners, your chances of breaking them are much higher. And I mean, I don't mean to scare you, but you really ought to, if you break somebody's scissors, you ought to replace them, even if you've told them beforehand. I would tell them, say, hey, if I break them, I will replace them with a comparable shear. Don't say the same shear, because number one, it might be a discontinued shear, like this little Joelle. I don't know if they make this particular one with no finger rest anymore. But you could replace this with, let's say, this is a 4.5 inch, no, it's a 5-inch shear, but you might replace it with a Bonika Baby, which is similar type of shear or something, and say I'll replace it with a comparable shear. So, and also, if you do break a shear, or if they say you ruined a shear and you need to replace it, whatever, don't let them have the shear. You take it back, even if it's, you know, even if it looks like this, you take it back from them. You don't leave that with them for them to say, hey, look what my sharpener did to my scissors. So don't ever, when you replace a scissor for whatever reason, you always get the other scissor back. So I hope that answered your questions on bending, hammering, aligning shears. If you try this and you break one of your customer shears, don't say Bonnie told me to do it, because I'm telling you to take them as a trade-in and then go home and work with them or something. Or if it's a Bonika shear, call us, get our permission, and I'll say, yeah, go ahead and see what you can do. If you break it, that's okay. We'll send you a shear to replace it. So those are my guidelines, and let me know how it goes, okay? Just let me know if this has worked for you or not. I've had some other videos that people have liked and they've subscribed to, and they've come back later and they say, hey, I watched it 3 times and I was able to get this, and I've made X amount of dollars because of the knowledge I got from you. So I'm sharing this with you freely, but we do have other videos. We have training at Bonika Shears, and once a year we have our Sharpeners Jam, which is free for sharpeners to come to. They come from all over the world, and we've been doing this for decades, so you need to come to the Sharpeners Jam. We do have hands-on classes on almost every year on how to bend and hammer and all that. I don't teach it. I let someone that does more dog grooming scissors and more of this stuff teach it other than me. But this gives you a little guideline of what you need to do.